Hey guys, and welcome to my recap of Day 3 of the 2026 Scrabble Players Championship held a couple of weeks ago in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We've already talked about Day 1 and Day 2, Day 1 being the great, smooth day, and then Day 2 being the first roller coaster. A good morning and then an absolutely horrific afternoon. When we left off, I just stormed out of the playing room after having an 0-3 afternoon, driven an hour each way to Waterloo, Iowa to clear my head, and gotten back for some much needed rest. Unfortunately, I did not get that rest, as just like the previous night, the freight trains were absolutely unrelenting. And I got maybe, guys, a couple of hours of sleep. And the next morning, after now having barely slept for 2 nights in a row due to the freight trains, it was really catching up to me. I was legitimately starting to feel sick that morning and really was struggling to focus over the board. And it showed in my first couple of games. I lost 2 more games to start out that morning. And if you are keeping track, that is now 5 consecutive games I have lost. I was 9-2 going into the lunch break on Day 2. I lose all 3 in that afternoon. I do my best to try to clear my head. Then I don't sleep again. I'm really tired, and I lose the first 2 games handily the next day. So I drop from 9-2 to 9-7. So now I'm on a 5-game losing streak. I'm feeling terrible. I'm having a very hard time even just focusing on the board and generating plays. Like, there was actually a point, guys, I'm not even kidding. I thought I might have to forfeit a game just to lie down and get some rest. That's how bad I was feeling. And there were actually a few other players during the tournament who had to do this. That's how bad the situation was. It was absolutely not just me, to be clear, who was sleep deprived, who was getting affected by these trains. It was affecting more Scrabblers than it wasn't. And there were some people who were just so exhausted they literally could not play anymore. A really, really unfortunate situation that hopefully never happens again. But basically what I did after those 2 losses is I just told myself, all right, Mac, just make it to lunch break. Thankfully, the Scrabble Players Championship has a really long lunch break after 4 games in the morning, and I figured if I could just get through the lunch break, try to play my next 2 games as well as I could, hopefully eke out a win or 2, then I could take a nice long nap during lunch, recover, and hopefully be back to nearly 100% or as close as I could be to it for the afternoon session. So that's what I told myself, and I enter the 3rd game of the day against Menachem Rosenberg. His first time in Division 1, but he has won Division 2 at Nationals before. He's a very strong player. He has outstanding word knowledge. I knew it was going to be a challenging game, and a challenging game it certainly was. That is the game I'm going to be showing you guys in today's video. Let's dive in. Menachem has the first move of this game and opens with a very nice play, Brazil for 40 points. And I have an awkward-looking rack, ADFIMNN. I consider a couple options here, ultimately settling on what appears to be my best play of Manny for 29 points. I don't love the leave of DFN, but this is simply too many points to pass up. I did also consider making the play Furman through the R of Brazil for 22 points, but I didn't want to give up 7 points and also give Menachem the big triple letter score next to the A of Furman if he drew the X or some other high-scoring tile. So the computer does agree with my play of Manny, although I'm already in a deficit early, down to just shy of 35% win chances. Menachem responds with a nice underlap of Hip, making Ami and Zap for 31 points, and I face another very awkward rack, just one vowel, CDFINTX. I reluctantly settle on what does appear to me my best play, Fid for 31 points under Hip, making high and a mid. It leaves CNTX, which is of course way too consonant heavy, and I also didn't like that it gives Menachem very easy counterplay under the F, with the F being right above a double word score. If he has an A or an E for Fa or Fe, it's going to be very easy for him to make a play on the 12 row, getting multiple overlaps and quickly racking up points. And not only did he make an overlap play, he made an overlap bingo. The gigantic tonemes for 96 points, jumping out to a 107-point lead, 167 to 60. And now, like I said, guys, I'm already feeling awfully this game. I've just lost 5 in a row. I'm barely able to see straight over the board. At this point, I'm thinking, all right, well, this is just about the end of the road for me. I'm probably going to lose this game now. He's up 107. I don't have any great counterplay, and things are really not looking good. I was truly at the end of my rope here at this point, probably more than at any other point during the tournament, but I tried to just do what I could to keep fighting, and I managed to, after thinking for a while here, make a pretty good play. I played Extent for 39 points through the T of tonemes. There are several other options, including some that don't involve playing through the T. I strongly considered as well playing Exec making lie over here, which does nicely set up the S for execs, but I just felt even at my deficit, this was leaving the door too open to game-ending plays by Menachem, either through the T of tonemes or also possibly double-doubles through the E of exec with a strong pool, including 2 blanks still unseen. I also felt that NST doesn't go particularly well with the open T, just because that is too many consonants, so I felt I was better off trying to be patient here, saving my S for Brazils, and hoping to come back that way. It's worth mentioning I chose not to play extent up here, instead playing it further down, so that way I would give myself a chance to bingo in the bottom of the board, in particular from the T at 15A, which could prove to be a useful bingo line for my comeback later on. So glad I was able to get this play right, even despite my state of not being able to focus particularly well. Menachem responds with a very interesting play here, just dropping his V, playing Vin for 6 points. And now, obviously, I am very alarmed. I'm like, shoot, he's winning and he's fishing. Normally, fishing is not a good strategy when you're ahead, just because it's very high variance and you want to be reducing variance when you're ahead. So I'm like, if he's fishing, he is probably really close to a bingo, and he's probably about to bingo again. And trust me, guys, when you are already down a bingo and you are confident your opponent is about to bingo again, and you're not feeling well, and you've lost 5 in a row, that is not a good feeling. Like, I was really not feeling great at this point. But luckily, I'm able to find a nice play here of Cobweb, which does clean out my rack nicely. Not a word you see on a Scrabble board often at all. I didn't love keeping the G, but this is a play I feel like I've got to make here. It opens the B, which could be a useful double-double line for me, keeps the S for Brazils, and basically here I am just praying that Menachem missed his fish and didn't draw a bingo. The engine actually wants me to play cow here for 29, which I think I briefly considered, but I didn't love the leave of B, E, G, S, and I didn't like putting the C there, really closing off the top left part of the board when I was still at a deficit. So I played Cobweb and just hoped that Menachem didn't bingo. Thankfully for me, he didn't, and he decided to fish again here, playing Oven F for 10 points. And this actually put me into a very interesting spot. So the good news for me is I have drawn quite well. I have multiple playable bingos. But the bad news is my seemingly best bingo is extremely dangerous. Eggcorns, a really cool play for 76 points, which is what I ended up doing. But I was extremely hesitant to do so because of Menachem's last 2 plays. He just fished off 1 tile, in particular, a constant 2 turns in a row. So I'm putting him on a really strong bingo lead that's probably leaning constant heavy. And what is the most helpful thing for a good bingo lead that leans constant heavy? Of course, you guys guessed it, it's an open E. So I was extremely scared to open an E in the triple-triple line. But I felt it was still the right play. The only way to not open a triple-triple is to play Snogger for 9 fewer points. I could also play Snogger either with Manny's or with Lee's, but these also open a triple-triple line, and thus didn't seem worth considering for that sacrifice. I ultimately decided I'm probably going to be in a bad position either way. Again, I'm thinking Menachem's going to bingo sooner or later, so I want some extra volatility. I think maybe after Eggcorns, he bingos elsewhere, and then I can get something through the E. But either way, I just decided my position is still weak enough, despite the fact that I'm bingoing and briefly retaking a lead. I wanted to keep some volatility in the game. The computer does strongly prefer Eggcorns. Keep in mind that the win percentage the computer is showing does not include any sort of inference about Menachem's rack. The computer's assuming he has a random rack, which he absolutely does not, given his last couple of plays. So Eggcorns, in reality, is going to perform considerably worse than the computer suggests. It's probably a very close decision, and I may have been better off playing Snogger, but either way, I decided to play Eggcorns. I think also, guys, if I'm being honest, at this point, like I said, I was still not feeling great and wanting to maybe force the issue a little bit more and take some chances and just kind of thinking like, all right, if he triple triples, he triple triples, let's just get it over with. If I'm being honest, I may have been thinking like that a little bit. I'm not exactly sure. But in any case, I play Eggcorns, and thankfully for me, Menachem doesn't triple triple. He does still score nicely with Drek for 42 points. Presumably, he just drew the K after his last 1 tile fish, so I was pretty happy to see this. Yes, it was 42 points, but it wasn't a bingo, it wasn't a triple-triple. I am still in this game. And I'm especially still in this game, and now starting to feel a little bit more of a sense of hope after I draw the blank. But I have some clunky tiles to go with it. No great plays here, and I end up playing Jaw for 29 points. This seems reasonable. The engine wants me to play Ahi for 33, maybe to take out the Brazils hook with 2 S's left. There is still a strong threat of Menachem bingoing with Brazils and really taking a stranglehold on this game, although he does give back Manias, which would also be a good line for him if he has an S. I guess there also are more vowels than consonants unseen. If we look at the right-hand side of the screen, we'll see that the pool is vowel heavy, 25 vowels, 22 consonants. So the I here that I'm keeping, although it looks like an asset to try to balance out this rack, may actually be a hindrance, especially because the I doesn't go all that well, not having ILY or ITY on my rack. So possibly Ahi here would have been a little bit better, but jaw seems perfectly reasonable as well. And unfortunately for me, Menachem now hits his bingo, getting down in the scene for 71 points and retaking the lead. And here I spent a long time. I'm thinking I've got to have a bingo here, especially through that N he just opened for ING. And I know I've said this multiple times already, but I was really not feeling very confident, given the state I was in here, that I was not missing a bingo. So I thought for much longer than I normally would here. Normally, even with a blank, I would trust myself after maybe 2 minutes or so that I wasn't missing something. I think I spent like 5 minutes here before finally giving up, and I ended up playing Dungy for 28 points, which the computer actually rates as a medium mistake. I really like this play. It forks the board nicely when I'm down, creating a threat through the Y on the bottom, as well as a double-double threat down the K column next to the D. The computer wants me to be a bit more defensive with Guy, which I considered and pretty quickly passed up on. Again, the last thing I wanted to do here at a deficit, especially with a blank, was to play defensively. I'm okay with Dungy here. I'm surprised the computer thinks it's this big of a mistake, but perhaps it just doesn't like the counterplay it gives Menachem on the bottom of the board to the Y. Either way, here Menachem makes a bit of an oversight, playing Waddle for 24 points. This looks like a good play in principle. After all, it is a long word, which is good for him with a lead. It gives him more turnover for the blanks. It exhausts a lot of space. However, he told me after the game that he forgot that Waddle takes a front T-hook to make twaddle, and had he realized that during the game, he probably wouldn't have made this play and would have played something like Wetley instead. So possibly a slight mistake here by my opponent, and fortunately for me, I was able to capitalize. I drew the other blank after Dungy, pulling DIOSU blank blank. And I have tons of bingos here. And the amazing thing is, I was, of course, looking through the Y of Dungy before Menachem made his play, thinking about whether I could have a triple-triple. It turns out I do not. The only playable bingo down there is Odiously. But I was also looking from the B of Cobweb, because bingos there would actually score more than bingos through the Y by virtue of being a double-double. And I had found a bunch of playable words there like Bedouins or boudoirs, and also the cool play of bodysuit. In part, I actually saw bodysuit ironically from the B so quickly because I had seen bodysuit through the Y as a possibility that didn't quite fit going one tile off the board. As you can see, if I try to play bodysuit, there is no room for the blank T. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I could play bodysuit from the B. Also, that's cool. And then Menachem plays Waddle. And I'm like, well, so much for that. I guess I'm going to bingo on the bottom. And then I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second here. Waddle takes a front T. Twaddle is a word. So not only could I play something like outside over here, I can actually still play bodysuit. So as soon as I realized that, I am like absolutely stunned, and I slap down bodysuit with 2 blanks for 104, making a very rarely seen 8-letter double-double with a right angle of twaddle, and that gets me my biggest lead of the game by far. All of a sudden, I'm up 366 to 320. But the game is definitely not over. There's still plenty of time left. There's multiple openings on this board. Like I said, I know Menachem's got really strong word knowledge, and I am all of a sudden starting to feel a bit more confident. Getting this play down really gave me a bit of a burst of energy and confidence. I'm starting to feel more awake and a little bit more like myself. Definitely not 100% to be clear, but a little bit better. And I'm starting to feel like, all right, like I really want to focus. I really want to win this freaking game at this point and try to get back into this tournament. Menachem has too many vowels, presumably, and opens the top of the board with eases. And I have a bit of a clunky draw after my bingo, pulling CPQRV along with a pair of A's. And here I think for a while, and finally, after a couple minutes, find the word vacay, which I always struggle to see. It's a new word, relatively speaking. It was added a couple years ago in the last update, and it's just a word I've always struggled to see. I think normally I would have seen this a little bit more quickly, but like I said, my brain, I think, was still not operating nearly at 100%, and I very nearly played Varia through this I of bodysuit, which actually is not a terrible play because it does block the line through the E that Menachem just created, but you definitely want to be taking the extra points here and playing vacay. It's worth mentioning the Q is not the end of the world here because I can always drop it with the I in bodysuit. That's another reason, by the way, Varia is not a good play because it takes away my Q spot. And with 2 U's unseen, I'm decently likely to be threatening a QU play that'll be better on my next turn. So very glad I found this. Menachem still saddled with vowels, makes a smart play here of Teray, opening the right-hand side of the board, as he's definitely going to need a bingo to come back. I do draw the U, but somewhat surprisingly, given that pool, no other vowels. The U is all I need, though. I play Qua for 32 points. At this point, pretty much knowing I've won the game, the pool is extraordinarily vowel-heavy. Even if Menachem does manage to hit a bingo, I should be up enough as well to outrun it, given that Qua is taking an over 80-point lead. Menachem fishes off a couple of O's here with Rue, and now the bag is empty. I know I've won the game at this point. I see Menachem has AILOTUY. I have this rack, and I actually do here have the presence of mind amazingly to iterate and find my best endgame. Like I said, getting that bodysuit play down in very improbable fashion really did give me a renewed sense of life, and I felt the urge here to really iterate and play this endgame optimally. I just felt this was going to be a pivotal game for me, guys, given how I was in such bad shape and how I came back in improbable fashion and won the game. I could just kind of sense that this was going to be a turning point, and I wanted to get it right. I wanted to really make the best endgame here, and even if those couple spread points weren't super important necessarily, it was more about just telling myself, like, hey, Mac, you still have it. You know, you can still come back. You're still good at Scrabble. Even if you're a little bit sleep deprived or compromised or whatever, like, you're still a threat. You can still do this. So I took my time here, let my clock run out, found my best endgame of Herpel. It's actually not that trivial in an in-game. There are some cool options like Quarrel, which I saw, but this would be a poor play because it gives Menachem the stylish 6-letter word of Aliyot on the right-hand side, making Aura, L, and Lee for almost 40 points. So I don't want to do that. I also don't want to make plays like her over here or even PHT because they don't give me the ability to go out on my next turn. So Herpel has the best balance of limiting Menachem's options while also guaranteeing an outplay for myself. So that's what I do. He plays Lay and Aqua for 19 points, and I go out with Try to clinch a miraculous and very important 469 to 379 win. So yeah, really crazy game here. Obviously, I got super lucky to come back. I also think I played amazingly well, especially considering, like I said, just how much I was struggling to focus. And I honestly think, guys, this win was the biggest turning point for me of this tournament, at least as far as things that happened over the board. Like I said, I was on a 5-game win streak, feeling terrible mentally, feeling terrible physically, like just everything was going wrong in every possible way. And then I'm down over 100 early in this game, and I had basically almost ridden myself off. And then again, guys, I just want to emphasize, all it takes is one good game. And even beyond that, all it takes is one lucky break, one good draw, one time drawing a second blank and hitting bodysuit as a double-double for 104. That's all it takes. So never give up. You know, keep staying in the game, whether it's in Scrabble, whether it's in another game, whether it's in life or anything, honestly. You know, just don't give up. Keep staying in it. Even if you're having a lot of bad breaks, your luck will turn, and you just have to give yourself the chance to stay in it. That way, if your luck does turn, or when your luck does eventually turn, you will be able to make the most of it. And that is thankfully what I was able to do here. And I come back with a miraculous win in this one. And then there was one more game before lunch. Like I said, I was feeling a lot better after this game, but I had a very tough opponent. The up-and-comer Jem Birch was my opponent in the game after this one in round 18. Luckily for me, unfortunately for Jem, I drew everything under the sun that game. I got both blanks. I think 3, if not all 4 of the S's. I absolutely bagged Jem. I started with like 3 or 4 bingos. There was absolutely nothing he could do. Obviously, I have a ton of respect for him as a player, and I say this in the nicest way possible. I was thrilled, frankly, to get such a game just because I knew he was a tough opponent, and I was still feeling so exhausted. I just really wanted to get up to my room as soon as possible and get into bed and take a nap. So I was thankful to have a bunch of bingos, have a relatively easy win over such a strong player, and I eagerly went to bed being 11-7, still not in great shape in the tournament, but now having an outside shot on a 2-game win streak and very happily taking a nap at the lunch break. So I wake up after my much needed nap at lunch, feeling considerably better, still nowhere near 100%. I still have a lot of sleep to make up, and I know that after the 3 games of the afternoon, I'm going to be going right back upstairs to my room and resting more. And miraculously, I kept winning that afternoon. My round 19 game, the first one after lunch, was another one just like my prior game with Gem I mentioned before, where I drew extremely well. I think I played 4 or 5 bingos and won handily, which, again, I was pretty thankful for given the circumstances. My round 20 game against longtime expert Ari Sink, who I've played many times, was actually far from a simple win. It was a very high-scoring game. I ended up taking that one 479 to 455, as you guys can see here. It was an awesome game. I actually got both blanks and bingoed like 4 times, but Ari, to his credit, hung in there really tough. He got a ton of great bingos and scoring plays. He and I have had a lot of interesting games, and this was certainly one of them. It's not going to be in today's video just because I felt the game against Menachem was more symbolic and more of an important turning point for me. I may make a separate video on the game with Ari at another time because, like I said, it was a really good game. But yeah, I won that one and then faced another really tough opponent in Chloe Fatsis, who I've had several really tough games against as well. You may remember a crazy game I played with her that I ended up winning by just 2 points in 2024. I made a video on at some point en route to my first SBC title back in South Bend, Indiana. And our game this year in round 21 was another very challenging game. I was actually in trouble for most of the game. She bingoed twice in the early to mid game, and I was down like 50 for the majority of the game, but I got a really lucky draw late in the game, pulling both an S and a blank at the same time, and managing to hit a late game bingo and pull away and hang on in the end game. So somehow I go from 9-7 and feeling like I can barely see straight to winning 5 in a row to being 14-7 and still being on the outside, still probably needing a great day 4 to have a chance of making the finals. But at this point, guys, I am just thrilled I even have a chance. Like, I feel extremely fortunate and relieved to even be in it. And now I've shifted from feeling probably about the worst I've ever felt at a Scrabble tournament to feeling great. Because at this point, I'm feeling like I have nothing to lose. I'm like, I honestly am shocked I'm even in this position where I have a chance after day 3. So I'm like, if somehow I capitalize on it and keep winning, that would be amazing. That would be great. But even if I don't capitalize, I'm thinking, all right, well, good on me for hanging tough and at least giving it a chance. And whatever happens, I can rest easy knowing I did that and I have a lot to be proud of. So that's how I was kind of feeling at the end of day 3. I was feeling much better mentally. I was still feeling very tired physically. So like I said, after games that day, I pretty much went back to my room, had dinner in my room. I thankfully got to the grocery store before the tournament, so I'd stocked up on a bunch of snacks and fruits. I remember I ate a bunch of like apples and plums just to make sure I was staying hydrated. Important point, by the way, guys, whether it's a Scrabble tournament or elsewhere, if you're forced to exert yourself when you're sick, please make sure you're staying hydrated. I was absolutely pounding water and fluids throughout the day and having fruit as snacks whenever I could. It is super important. You can really go from feeling bad to feeling worse if you're not staying hydrated. So just a quick health PSA, if you're not feeling well, please make sure you stay hydrated. And that's exactly what I was doing as best as I could that night. And I finally got some rest and actually managed to sleep quite well that night. That was probably the best night of sleep I got in Cedar Rapids. It still was not a great night, don't get me wrong. I was woken up at some point by a train. I probably got like 6 or 7 hours. So, decent night, especially compared to what I was getting on some other nights, but still not ideal. But in any case, I got to bed early on day 3, which was much needed, and I was feeling considerably more well-rested going into day 4. So that is going to do it for today's video, guys. Another absolute crazy roller coaster of a day. Both day 2 and day 3, the highs and the lows were just insane. Like, unlike, honestly, anything I've experienced at another Scrabble tournament, and I've been playing competitive Scrabble at the top level now for about 15 years, so just absolutely wild stuff. And the tournament, like I said, was still far from over. I somehow had a chance on day 4, if I kept it together, to go on a run or extend my current run and make the finals. So would I be able to do it? We will find out in the next recap video on day 4. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you there.